She has missed 3 games this season. 3. And every single time she sits, the WNBA quietly holds its breath because everyone inside that league office already knows what the numbers are about to show. There is a countdown running right now inside Indiana Fever headquarters, and almost nobody talking about it in public. It has nothing to do with wins and losses. It has to do with how many minutes one 24-year-old woman's back can survive before something gives out completely, and whether the answer arrives this season or next. Before we get into it, hit subscribe, because this story is still being written in real time, and what happens over the next few weeks could change how you watch women's basketball forever. Let's start with the picture nobody wanted to admit out loud for 2 straight years. When Caitlin Clark plays basketball, something happens that the WNBA had not seen in over a decade and a half. Her season opener against the Dallas Wings pulled in roughly 2.49 million viewers on network television, one of the largest audiences for a regular season WNBA game since the year 2000. A few weeks later, her matchup against the New York Liberty on CBS pulled in 2.56 million. Then, on a random Tuesday night in the middle of June, on a cable channel against a 2-year-old expansion team called the Toronto Tempo, her game drew 1 million viewers. That number matters more than it sounds. Sports analysts pointed out that before Clark entered the league, the WNBA had gone nearly 16 years without hitting 7 figures on any broadcast at all. Now hold that thought, because here's the part that turns this from a feel-good statistic into a genuine crisis. Caitlin Clark has not had a healthy season since she entered the league. Her rookie year ended fine. Her second year, in 2025, fell apart completely. A left quad injury in training camp, a different quad strain 4 games in, a groin injury a month later, then another groin injury that never let her return. She played just 13 games out of 44. The WNBA's own All-Star game that summer, held in her home city of Indianapolis, drew audiences down 36% from the year before, specifically because she couldn't take the floor. So, when 2026 opened, everyone wanted to believe the story was over. Clark looked sharp in preseason, healthy, explosive, ready. And then, in her very first regular season game back, during the opening weekend broadcast that pulled in 2.5 million viewers, she had to leave the court mid-game to get her back manually adjusted. Her coach, Stephanie White, admitted afterward that keeping her back aligned was going to be, in her words, an ongoing thing. That sentence should have scared people more than it did, because it did become an ongoing thing. She missed a game in May against the Fire. She kept playing through June, piling up big performances, big ratings nights, that record-breaking tempo game among them. But underneath all of that, her body was quietly negotiating with itself, game after game, and nobody outside the training room really knew how close things were to breaking. Then came the night everything nearly did. Late June, a home game against the Phoenix Mercury. It was physical from the opening whistle. At one point, Phoenix forward Alyssa Thomas was hit with a retroactive flagrant foul and a 1-game suspension for putting a fist to Clark's throat during a scramble for the ball. On a separate play, Clark came down from a jump shot and appeared to land on a defender's foot, with no foul called at all. She finished the game hurt and left early. 2 days later, her coach stood in front of reporters and delivered a line that should have set off alarms across the entire league. No indication of how long she'd be out. Stick with me here, because what happened in the days after that announcement is exactly the kind of thing that gets buried in a highlight reel but tells you everything about how fragile this entire ecosystem really is. Clark missed the next game. Then she missed the following one too. A road trip to Las Vegas against the defending champion Aces, one of the most anticipated matchups of the season. Fans didn't take it quietly. Across social media, furious Clark supporters openly called for a viewership boycott of the league until she returned, some telling other fans to flood league sponsors with complaints, others simply refusing to watch a single game without her on the floor. Whether or not you agree with that reaction, it tells you something the league has spent 2 years trying not to say directly. A meaningful share of the WNBA's current audience isn't there for the league. They're there for one player. And here's where it gets uncomfortable for everyone involved, including people who genuinely love this sport and want it to succeed on a broader footing. Around this same stretch, one of the league's marketability rankings named Aja Wilson the most marketable player in the WNBA, with Clark landing third. On paper, that's a defensible pick. Wilson is an extraordinary player and a four-time MVP caliber talent, but the ranking landed at almost the exact moment television numbers were once again proving that audiences show up overwhelmingly for one specific jersey. Fans didn't hold back. Some called the methodology subjective. Others pointed out that every single one of the most watched regular season games over the past 2 years featured Clark and only Clark. That gap between what the league's own institutions want to be true and what the ratings actually show has become the defining tension of this entire season. And it's not going away quietly. Now, let's talk about why this actually matters financially, because the money conversation people expect here isn't the one that's actually happening anymore. For a long stretch, it looked like the WNBA's entire labor future was going to be decided by exactly this kind of question: whether the league's growth was broad enough to justify dramatically higher player salaries, or whether it all rested on one injury-prone rookie. That fight is actually over. Back in March of 2026, the league and its players' union finalized a landmark 7-year collective bargaining agreement after more than a year of tense negotiation. Salary caps jumped from $1.5 million a team to $7 million. Average salaries are projected to climb past $500,000 this year and cross $1 million by the end of the decade. Charter flights, league-wide housing, and real revenue sharing all became permanent parts of the league's structure. Clark herself was in the room when the deal closed, and by all accounts gave an emotional toast celebrating it alongside the union's leadership. So the players already won their financial security. That part of the story has a happy ending, and it's worth sitting with for a second, because it means what's happening right now isn't a fight over survival. It's a fight over something arguably more fragile: whether the league's single biggest commercial engine can physically hold up long enough to keep proving the growth was worth betting on in the first place. Which brings us back to the only question that actually matters going into the second half of the season. Can her body take it? After that scary stretch in late June, Clark came back on a strict plan. She returned in early July against the Los Angeles Sparks, but her coaching staff had her playing in short 3-minute bursts, in and out of the rotation all night, just to manage the load. She admitted afterward that playing that way made it almost impossible to find any rhythm at all. The very next night, against Phoenix, she didn't play at all. Deliberately rested on the second half of a back-to-back. Then came Sunday against Las Vegas, where she was cleared to play again, this time on a 20 to 25-minute restriction, an increase from the 16 minutes she'd managed a few days earlier. Piece that timeline together and you get a picture of a franchise walking an incredibly careful tightrope. On one side, a superstar who has already played more games this season than she managed in the entire injury-wrecked year before it. On the other, a body that keeps sending small, recurring signals that something underneath is still not fully right. And here's the detail that should genuinely worry anyone paying close attention. The Indiana Fever have actually been winning without her. They beat Phoenix on that same back-to-back stretch while she sat, improving to 13 wins and 9 losses, good for 7th place in the league standings. That's a good thing for the roster's depth. It is a considerably more complicated thing for the argument that this entire operation depends on one player's health. Because if the Fever can win consistently without Clark on the floor, but the television audience still collapses the moment she's not playing, then the league is left holding two contradictory truths at once. The team can survive without her. The business cannot. So where does this actually go from here? There are really only a few paths available, and none of them are simple. In one version, the Fever's medical staff finds a sustainable long-term management plan, something between load management and full workload, that lets Clark play close to a full season without another major setback. Ratings stay near their historic highs. The league gets the extended runway it needs to develop its next generation of draws, and this whole stretch becomes a footnote in a much bigger success story. In another version, the back issue becomes the new normal, the kind of recurring, unpredictable ailment that chips away a handful of games every month for years, the way her quad and groin injuries did throughout 2025. In that version, the league spends every single season managing a controlled crisis, never quite sure from one week to the next whether its biggest night on the schedule is going to deliver record numbers or another disappointing dip. And in the version nobody in that league office wants to think about for too long, this recurring back issue turns into something more serious. Something that costs her real extended time, right as the CBA's new investments and expanded broadcast deals are counting on her being the centerpiece night after night. Nobody knows yet which of these is actually unfolding. Not the coaching staff, not the medical team, and certainly not us watching from the outside. What we do know is that every single game she plays right now is basically a live experiment being run in front of millions of people, and every single game she misses adds one more data point to a question the entire league would rather not have to answer publicly. What exactly happens to women's professional basketball if the engine at the center of it simply can't hold up to a full season? That question isn't going away. If anything, it gets louder every time she walks back into that locker room for treatment. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Caitlin Clark's body can hold up for a full, uninterrupted season? Or is this recurring back issue the start of a pattern the league is going to be managing for years? Drop your prediction in the comments below, and if you want to see how this plays out, make sure you're subscribed, because the next update on this story could come any day now.